Hey guys, we just wanted to say a quick something up top. Obviously, most of our episodes are recorded pretty far in advance. This one was recorded a couple weeks ago, maybe even a few weeks ago, with a really amazing guest that we're excited for you to listen to. But we just wanted to make sure that we said up top, we want to address everything that's going on because obviously it's a very difficult time right now, and hopefully direct you if you are someone who feels like overwhelmed and kind of like, I don't know what to do or where to start, direct you to some resources that you can be helpful.
Yeah. So first of all, if you text Floyd to 55156, that will automatically send you a link to a petition to sign to demand justice for George Floyd. Takes literally like 30 seconds. I feel like that is one of the quickest, easiest things you can do and feel like you are having your voice be heard and making an impact. So highly recommend doing that.
Yeah, and you can also contact Minneapolis District Attorney Mike Freeman. The phone number is 612-348-5550 to request that the officers are charged. And I recommend calling them. Their business hours are Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. So just a heads up on that. I tried calling over the weekend. You can't get through. So keep it to a weekday, and we should be able to make a difference that way as well.
Yeah. And then if you're looking for places to donate, I mean, it's pretty easy to find them on social media right now. One post that we've all posted and put up on the Self-Helpless page, if you haven't seen it, has been posted by a lot of people, and it directs you to like 6 different places: the GoFundMe for the Floyd family, Minnesota Freedom Fund, Black Visions Collective, Reclaim the Block, Campaign Zero, and Unicorn Riot. Somebody messaged me this morning and said that the Minnesota Freedom Fund has actually gotten so much support that they are now directing people to other organizations as well. So it's not hard to find places to donate if you're looking to do that. But I understand feeling very like overwhelmed and going, where do I even start? There's also, if you want to help support people who are protesting and being arrested and whatnot, there's a lot of resources for that as well.
Yeah. The point is just do what you can. Everybody's in different positions to help and just do everything you can right now. And we love you. We're sending everybody love during this really hard time.
Yeah. And I just want to say, I'm speaking for myself as well. Like, it's all of our individual responsibility to educate ourselves on this. And there's a lot of incredible resources out there, especially that are popping up right now that are very accessible. And I think we can all do better. Like, we can all look more into this and become better allies and be open to growth. And yeah,
totally.
It's just pretty horrific. So
yeah. All right. Yeah, love you guys, and here is this week's episode.
Can you help? Can you help me? Can you help? Self-Helpless! Can you help? Can you help me? Can you help? Self-Helpless! Can you help? Can you help me? Can you help? Self-Helpless!
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Self-Helpless podcast. I'm Delaney Fisher.
I'm Kelsey Cook.
And I'm Taylor Tomlinson.
And today we have an amazing guest who was so very open about sharing with us her experience raising a child with special needs. She happens to be my wonderful cousin, who's also a teacher and just like very type A, so perfect for this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And she talks about her son, Harrison, who's 12 years old, who was diagnosed with Fragile X syndrome when he was 6 weeks old. So without further ado, here is Josephine. You guys, we are so excited for today's guest. We have Josephine here with us. She is an incredible teacher. She's my beautiful cousin. Actually, if you've seen some of my stand-up, if you've heard of my vagina spray joke, that shit is about her. And she's also a parent of a child with special needs. And I wanted to dive into this topic because I don't think it's discussed enough. I think a lot of people shy away from conversations like this, which prevents everyone collectively from getting the education necessary for us to show up in a compassionate, supportive way. And especially during quarantine with access to services being affected for children with special needs, their parents, and so on, I felt this was a really important topic to address. So Josephine,
wow, that's
Josephine
so
to the show.
cool.
So happy to have you.
You made me feel so important.
Well, we love that you're here, and let's kick it off with your favorite or least favorite quote, if you have one.
I did. I was asked to email it to you. It's actually from Maya Angelou. It's like, do your best until you know better, and then when you know better, do that, or it's something like that, right?
I love that.
I love that.
Sounds good. Sounds about right. And I love the quote that you also said that your son says every day. You want to share
every
that with everybody?
day. So my son Harrison is 12. He just turned 12, and he's the one who has special needs. And every day, he must have gotten it from like a TV show or some YouTube video or whatever. But every day he comes over to me and he gives me a hug and he'll go, "Oh, it's a perfect day." So I want to put that on like one of those wooden signs.
Yeah.
Put it on my wall somewhere.
Oh, I love that. That is precious.
I know. Every day. It's a perfect day. When he's in trouble, he'll come up to me and go, "Oh, it's a perfect day."
You're like, is it though?
I know, right?
So right now I'm
No,
kind of
it's
pissed at you.
Not
That is
perfect.
so cute.
It's sweet. It is sweet.
He's amazing. So Josephine, if you don't mind just kind of giving us some background, like, can you take us back to when you found out that Harry had special needs and what that experiences was like?
So it was crappy. So I have 2 kids, right? My other one is 14. And I had him. I was, I'm one of 5 siblings, right? And Delaney's like the bonus sibling in our family. So I was pregnant and I had already had 1 baby and I had no issues or complications with that one at all. And then I got pregnant again when my older one was about 2.5. So they'd be about 2-3 years apart. Right. And so my sister was also pregnant at the same time when I was pregnant with the second one. And I was heading towards my last trimester and she was just in the very beginning of her pregnancy. And I remember this so distinctly, like it was yesterday. She called me on the phone and she said, "Hey, I have to tell you something." And I'm like, "What is it?" And she had just found out she was pregnant. She was doing like her beginning blood work and all that kind of stuff that you do. And she said, "I found out I'm a carrier for Fragile X syndrome." And I said, "Well, what's that?" Right? That's the first thing people usually say is, "What is that?" Yeah. And she said, "It is basically, it's inherited mental impairment." I'm like, "What?" And she said, "It's genetic. It's like," she said, "My doctor says it's the second most common thing but after Down syndrome." And I said, "Okay, well, don't worry about it." It was very like, "Don't worry about it. You'll be fine. I'm sure you're fine." That kind of thing. She's like, "Josephine, it's genetic." And I wasn't registering what she was saying to me. And she said, "Well, and I go, "Okay." And she said, "Well, that means you could be a carrier too." And I said, "Well, my doctor didn't say anything to me about that." So she said, "Well, does your doctor screen you for that?" Because, they screen you for all kinds of things, Down syndrome, sickle cell, depending on your race or your ethnicity or whatever, there's certain things that are common for certain people. And I said, "I don't even know if they tested me for that." But I had one son already and he was fine, right? There was nothing. So I called the doctor the next day and I said, "Do you do you test for Fragile X syndrome? And they said, no, why? And then I said, well, my sister's pregnant and she also found out she's a carrier. So what does that mean for me? And they said, you need to go to a genetic counselor. So I made an appointment with a genetic counselor, and I'm basically, I want to say, I don't even know how pregnant I was. I was 6-7 months pregnant. I was getting there, so I'm having this baby no matter what, because I'm at that point in the pregnancy. So I went to a genetic counselor. They said, it's a simple DNA test. We can find out, in about 2 weeks, whether or not you're also a carrier or whatever. So, and this was, I'm sure testing has changed now. This was, 12 years ago. So I got the test. I was at work, I remember at the time. The doctor calls me. I pick up the phone. They said, you are also a carrier. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? Yeah. And they said, well, that means you have a 50% chance of having a child with mental impairment. 50%, right? That's like a huge, so I had one that wasn't, and I found out I had the same risk with the first one. I had no idea.
Wow.
So I had no idea. So I then went and I started reading everything I could find, and it is the second most inherited form of mental impairment after Down syndrome. And it affects boys more severely than girls, because girls have 2 X chromosomes. So oftentimes one will make up for the other. So they're typically higher functioning, even though there are some severely affected women or girls. But it's typically more profound in boys because they only have 1 X chromosome. So that's it. So I have a 12-year-old, but he functions more, he's on the more severe side. So he functions more like a 2-3-year-old, probably.
And
right?
You mentioned, Josephine, that like when you first found out, that first step you took was like signing up for Facebook and looking into like what other family members. Where does it come from?
Like, does anybody we know, does anybody I'm related to have kids with special needs? Like,
right.
It might look like autism. Oftentimes it's mistaken as autism. But there's a genetic component to it. So yeah, that's what I did. When I found out, I'm like, oh crap, what am I supposed to do? The doctor said, okay, so you have a 50% chance of having a child with special needs, basically.
Yeah.
And so I'm towards the end of my pregnancy, and they said, we could do an amnio, which is when they stick that big needle in and pull fluid and test the baby. They said, but you're so far along that, an amnio is not necessarily the safest thing. It could put you into preterm labor. And then if there's nothing wrong with the baby and then you go into early labor, you could cause the baby to have problems. Huh. So, I literally have no option to do anything. Not that I would, but there's no option. I'm having a child and he may or may not be mentally impaired, right? Yeah. He may or may not have cognitive delay. I have no idea.
And that was like 2 months before you gave birth?
Yes. So I was literally...
The anxiety,
anxiety was terrible. I would literally go online and look at stuff. All the things you should not do. You should not look up anything online. You should not watch YouTube videos, because most people just post worst case scenarios. Oh, this, that, and the other. I read so many mom blogs, and I'm just setting myself up. But maybe I had this internal knowing. I don't know. So he was born. I had a really good delivery. All of that was normal. And they, before we left the hospital, they did a blood draw. And then it took over a month to get the results. Oh, because it was like about 5 or 6 weeks. So he was like 5 or 6 weeks before I even found out. But by that time it's like, okay, well, he's my baby. And he's like, he just looks like a baby. Like I was just, I didn't know what to expect. Right. Just people with Fragile X syndrome, especially as infants, it's not like other syndromes where there's definite like facial features or, things like that. In Fragile X syndrome, and especially in boys, and what I'm seeing now, the kind of facial features people talk about, like, ears that stick out or an enlarged forehead. That's a common one. They don't really come around until about puberty, right? So he just looked like a baby, and the doctor, when I went to the pediatrician, and I said, well, do you know anything about this? And he's like, no. He said, most doctors, may have one or two patients in their career that have this. And I'm like, oh, of course. And I'm the one, right? I'm your one.
Wow.
Oh,
So
man.
my next step was to find a pediatrician that I knew that would know about it. So that was my next step. So I found a really good pediatrician who we've been with since he was a baby. And I'm dying right now because he's pretty much on the verge of retirement and is only sees patients part-time. And so I found a good developmental pediatrician who knows about it and that kind of thing. So that's been good. But literally they don't really know what to tell you.
Right.
And a lot of it is, he was a baby, so he's going to do regular baby things. But when you have a child and they have something, I didn't know in the beginning, like, well, is this because he has Fragile X syndrome or is this because he is 6 months old?
Right,
So
right,
I didn't know. So, at that moment I become like, I want to be the hero. And I think that, okay, well, I have a diagnosis. So then my feeling is, how do I fix it? Right. But you can't fix it. It's not going to ever be fixed. So it was about then, well, what do you do when you have a child with special needs? So years earlier, I had a student who had Asperger's or high functioning autism. I don't know if you call it Asperger's anymore. I don't know what the
I'm not sure.
I don't know. I don't want to be offensive. I don't want to offend anybody.
Oh,
but
no,
he was on the autistic spectrum, and his mother was like this warrior for him, right? She was a huge advocate. And I called her, and I still had her contact info, and I called her, and I just said, like, what do I do? What do I do?
Wow.
And she's like, the first people, I'm in California. So she said, the first thing you need to do is call the regional center. So California has what they call regional centers. So they handle children and adults with disabilities, and at this point, he's just considered at risk for delay. He's a baby. Babies don't do anything. They just lay there and sleep and eat. And so I don't know, what do I do? Like, how do I fix this or whatever? So his intervention started really early. So I started getting early intervention to make sure he would meet his milestones, like clapping and crawling, all these things we don't even think about. We just do them, right? But he literally has to be taught everything. So, and it takes a long time. So that's where I went. I found a doctor. I got in touch with whoever the resource was. It was the regional center. They came and they basically said, we're going to take, we take on these cases, right? And we will help you find services as you need them.
Yeah.
So by the time he was a year old, he was getting early intervention. He started getting, by the time he was 18 months, he was in speech therapy. He had physical therapy. He had occupational therapy. So my life now becomes this, like, all I do is therapy. And I'm still doing that. So I'm still doing that.
Yeah.
But I try to be very aggressive and proactive. So
right.
in this, right? So because what else am I going to do?
Right.
Right.
So Josephine, when you found out, so Harry was 6 weeks old, right?
About 5 or 6 weeks old.
5 or 6 weeks. So can you, if you're comfortable with it, can you take us back to that moment of like that phone call and
yes,
the thoughts that filled your head and like how you felt and like, how'd you feel towards also like your sister whose baby didn't have it and all the thoughts, if you're willing to share that?
So this is interesting. So I had made a deal with the pediatrician. So this is before we switched pediatricians. So, when they tested him, I took him to the same pediatrician as my older one. And he's like, we're going to, they tested his blood in the hospital. And so, he basically said to me, we'll know in time. And he's like, well, how do you want me? He's like, what do you want to do? He's like, I don't want to. So we made the deal that he was going to call me into the office regardless of the results. Right. Okay. So I would go in and I would get the results in person, not over the phone. So when I got the phone call to tell me to come in, I knew he had it. And the reason why I knew he had it is because I was thinking to myself, if I were a doctor and he didn't have it, I would just say, you don't need to come in. He doesn't have it. He's fine. Right. Right. Cause that's anxiety provoking. So I'm like, he has it. And then, my husband at the time, because I've had two, my husband at the time, was like, you don't know that. You don't know that. You made a deal that you were going to go in no matter what. And I said, no, he has it, because he would just tell me if he didn't. He wouldn't put me through that.
Yeah.
So sure enough, we went in as a family, and he said he was reading the chart. He was trying his best. He's like, he has what we call a full mutation. And I thought, what does that mean? He's like, I don't really know. I just know that means that he has it. He has Fragile X syndrome. How it's going to look, we don't know. Because like other genetic issues, abnormalities, like it's an umbrella. There's some people who are super high functioning and some people who are not. So, how it's going to look depends on, how aggressive you are with services, how involved you are, and that kind of thing. So at that point, I made it my mission then to learn everything about it, find other people, and like this whole kind of world opened up to me, right? Because now I'm connecting with people my mission was to find other people whose kids had it, because I didn't know anybody. I never even heard of it. So then I connected with I looked online. I found the Southern California Fragile X Association, who was they were probably my first link to, they were my first link to other people. And so, and as soon as you email their info, let us know if you have any questions or whatever. I'm like, I'm a new mom. I just got this diagnosis. Please, what do I do? Right. I remember a lady from there who still to this day I talk to every once in a while. She called me, and then I ended up finding the Mind Institute the Mind Institute at UC Davis, which is a Fragile X research kind of clinic, and they research genetic disorders and whatnot. Yeah. And we went up to Sacramento and we met with the doctor up there, Dr. Rondi Hagerman, who's kind of world renowned in the field of Fragile X research. Yeah. So it was just about like connecting all these dots. And then I remembered that the best advice I got was I had decided to go to like a Fragile X Association board meeting, because, I was going to be this like hero now. Right. Mm-hmm. And she looked at me, and I remember I brought him with me, and he was in his carrier because he was just like 10 weeks old or something like that at this point. And she looked at me and she said, it was another mom who had a child with Fragile X. And she just said, he's just a baby right now. Just enjoy that, because that's going to go fast. Like your other kid, just enjoy him being a baby. Yeah. It's all very gradual, like all the delays. Right. Mm-hmm. So then you asked me about how did I feel about my sister? Well, I love my sisters, as you know, right? They're like my best friends. And the hardest thing, and it's still a little bit hard now, is, my sister, who was pregnant at the same time as me, her son was born about 3 months after, and he's unaffected. So to watch them grow up side by side has been a little bit hard.
It's okay, Joe.
I don't cry unless I think about it, which is a common thing. So that's been a little bit hard, but he's also my nephew, who I adore. He's in one of my classes at school. He's almost serves as the little brother my older son didn't get. Do you know what I mean? So it's been interesting.
Yeah. So when you find out, you kind of went into like problem solving mode in a way, like survival mode.
Yes.
And maybe didn't fully kind of
No.
You're like me. I mean, we're all very similar kind of personalities.
Yes.
Okay, now what? X, Y, and Z. And then when you finally like get still and you think about these things, that's kind of when it hits you like what's going on. And so
It was like that. Yes. It was very much like, how do I fix it? Even though it can't be fixed. What am I going to do? How am I going to work full time and have another child and still be his mom and now have this massive therapy schedule on my plate?
Right.
But like that whole, it takes a village. It does. Like it really does. You know, my mom would step in and, you know, I have a work meeting, Mom. Can you do the therapy with him today or whatever? You know, like everybody steps. Everybody overwhelmingly like helped. I remember I hosted like a Fragile X awareness day for my family. I made everybody a binder.
You're so type A. Oh my gosh.
Oh my God. I love that.
I made everybody a binder. I invited people over. We watched a video, like a documentary.
Yeah. The teacher in you came out. Yeah.
The teacher in me came out. And thank God I am a teacher because I don't know, I don't know how some parents are doing it right now with no school in place. Like I'm very fortunate that even though, you know, I'm in quarantine, but I am teaching, like I'm still teaching online, like full time, which has been a real challenge, like hard. Yeah. And then I have my kids at home. So managing their school, but with Harrison, he's not like, I can't just say, go do your math homework. Right. I've got to do it and I've got to sit with him.
Right.
So, and I've got to do his therapy via telehealth. So I'm literally on a Zoom call, a minimum of 3 hours a day. We do one in the morning and one in the afternoon. On Wednesdays, we add an OT session, occupational therapy. And then his teacher has a class Zoom, you know, everything has to be, he's dependent on me for like life. So I've gained like 50 pounds since we've been in here. Terrible.
Well, because I think it's going to be really interesting to kind of dig into like how the services have changed and stuff like that. Before we kind of get into that, can you kind of speak on, you know, I think a lot of people have a lot of misconceptions about children with special needs, parents of children with special needs, all of that stuff. Can you kind of talk about experiences of like you being in public with Harry and the fact that he's 12, but you said that it's more like having, you know, 2 or 3 year old in a lot of ways, and the things people have said to you or things like that, where they're either accidentally offensive or they're just blatantly rude, or like, can you kind of talk about some of those?
Oh yes. Those people are great. So, you know, I think it was worse before. I think people over the last, 12 years of this, I think more people are evolving. I don't know. I mean, there's so many different kinds of people now, and so many things are acceptable now than maybe 12 years ago. But people can be jerks. Like, when he was younger, it was easier to mask because he was, 3, and what 3-year-old is not having a tantrum in the middle of Target, right?
Right.
Well, not all of them, but mine did. and then even the other one, it's fun. But people will just come up. People just think they can come up to you and tell you how to parent, which is interesting because I don't think I can do that. I would never do that. But I don't like conflict. So I don't, he'd be, yelling loud. He's got some vocal stemming. So he does this thing where it sounds like he's eeing, you go ee. And I remember I was up on the 3rd Street Promenade in the Gap, and this woman, and he's really hyper. So he'll like bounce up and down and kind of flap a little bit, like his hands. This was years ago. And this woman comes up to me and he's making noises and he's happy. He's like happy. And I'm actually like, he's happy. I can shop right now because normally I can't. Yeah. It's hard to do that. So, and this woman looks at me, and I'm with my sisters, mind you. She looks at me and she's all, can't you make him shut up? Oh my God. Oh. So my sister, Karen, she went ape shit on this woman. Like, it was
good for Karen.
She went off on this woman.
Karen.
Yeah, baby.
She went off on her, right? And she she's looked at her and she's like, how dare you? And then the woman felt bad, obviously. And then she came up to me and I just looked at her and I said, I said something like, I hope you don't ever have a child with special needs because you'd be a shit mom or something like that. I just said something. I don't remember what I said, but it's like, when I look at him, it's obvious to me, like, obviously this is not a neurotypical child, right? So why would you even think that's okay? But then I was like, oh, maybe people think he is neurotypical because he doesn't have, like, you know, when you see somebody with Down syndrome, they have Down syndrome, right? There's facial features, he doesn't have that. So he looks fairly normal. And so normal, quote unquote, right? He looks fairly typical. And so people, when things come out of his mouth, it doesn't match what he looks like chronologically, right? So he's 12, but he'll be flat out in the middle of the parking lot having a meltdown because we're going into Target rather than Home Depot or whatever. And it wasn't what he expected. So he'll just plop in the middle of the ground and he's got no safety awareness. And so people will just feel free to, like, come up to him and be like, are you okay? What's wrong with you? Why is he crying? And I'm just like,
oh my gosh,
what?
That's insane.
People are so nosy.
People are very nosy. And so then at that point, I got these little business cards that the Fragile X, the Fraxa.org, Fraxa.org is the Fragile X research organization website, whatever. And they make these little business cards. I don't know if they still do, that basically are informational. Like, this is my child. This is what he has. If you have any questions or if he's disturbing you or whatever, like, you can pass them out. So that was the next thing. I need to educate people, right? That was the next thing on my list. So now, and at first that was really, I took those things so personally, like, how dare you? Now I'm just like, you're stupid. You know what I mean? Like, you're stupid, really. Right. So, but people do, they stare, they want to know if everything's okay. Can I help you? That's my least favorite one. Do you need some help? And I said, no, thank you. I have a child with special needs. Obviously, I don't need your help, but thank you. And I don't know why I get upset about that, because I know deep down, most people are trying to be thoughtful and they think they're helping you, which is really nice. But my favorite comments are the ones from parents like, just hang in there, mom. Like, I like those ones, or just like, I got one at home, he doesn't even have special needs. Like, I like those.
Right.
Comments.
Yeah.
Right. The best parking lot comment I got was a mom came up to me. Harrison was making his sounds that he makes. And a mom comes up to me and she's like, I don't want to offend you, but does your son have Fragile X syndrome? And I looked at her and I'm all, oh, yes. Do you know what that is? Right. And she's like, yes, my son has it. And so it was like a whole, but she knew, she recognized some of the symptoms or the symptoms or things that he was doing. She recognized that. And that was like the greatest. And so I don't know. So when people get it, it's like, oh, thank God somebody gets it. Yeah. Because a lot of people just don't know, or they just think, that kid's having a tantrum or whatever. It's really hard to take him places. So we have to practice community outings. Like, I have to go places with the idea that I'm just going to go and then leave to like practice going into a place, following along with the shopping cart or whatever, because he'll run away or, go to where he wants to go. So we have to practice those outings, So right now I'm training him to wear a mask because
oh, wow.
He can't wear a mask. We're up to 5 seconds. So he literally can tolerate it for 5 seconds. And we practice that like 5 or 10 times a day. I time it. So we like set the timer on my phone. The timer goes off. he gets like a reward. After he does it 5 times, he gets like 5 minutes on his iPad or something. Like, we're training him to wear a mask.
It's like exposure therapy or something in a way, right? Like all these things that you have to train, it's like a few seconds at a time and you slowly get longer
so
and
we're
longer.
And when he can do it so many times at 5 seconds, then we'll increase the time.
Right.
So so he gets something called ABA, which is applied behavioral analysis. It's like behavior therapy to, functional life skills like shoe tying and, brushing your teeth and things like that. That's what we're doing 3 hours a day of. And so they've added a goal for him to wear a mask, because who knows, I won't be able to take him anywhere. He's
right.
Because he's 12. So, they say anybody, 2 and up or 3 and up has to wear a mask in certain places. So I have to train him to wear a mask. So I'm worried now that he won't want to leave the house after it's over. Like,
Yeah.
He's been stuck at home.
I have a lot more questions for you, Josephine, but Taylor, Kelsey, do you have any questions that have come up for you that you want to ask Josephine about before I get into a couple more?
Oh my gosh. I mean, you're so thorough and you talk about it really
long-winded.
Really. I mean, I feel like I'm learning so much just listening to you. And I mean, I feel like you are such a wonderful person to have had a child with this, because you're so, like you said, proactive and informed, and you have found all these resources, and you've like become a resource for other people who are going through the same thing, which is so amazing and so needed. And I'm really just like sitting here in awe of you, honestly.
Oh, that's very thoughtful. Same. What's so funny is like when people ask me questions, I forget that my normal is not the same as other people's normal. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is just my normal. Like, you don't have 3 hours of Zoom therapy we don't use Zoom, but you don't have 3 hours of telehealth therapy every day, or whatever. Yeah. Like, it's just part of my routine at this point. So, when people look at me and go, you do that, or that he does that, or whatever, I'm just like, oh yeah. But I forget that for other people, that's like so weird or so what or different, I just forget that.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And so you said, you have one son with special needs, one who does not have special needs. How has raising them been different, but also the same? Can you kind of speak to those?
Okay. Things? So I would say the biggest thing that someone told me early on, and it's really hard to do, was to, treat them the same way, hold them to the same expectations. If you ask the older one time and he doesn't do it, that's wrong. There's a consequence for that. So with Harrison, he processes things slower. It's, what takes one kid 3 times to learn, it takes him 103 times to learn, so, but just to be consistent, I think, is the most important thing for any parent, really. I mean, I'm no expert in parenting at all by any means, but consistency is this, like, you have to be consistent with any child. So special needs or not. It's really easy to let like guilt creep in because, I was the carrier, so I feel guilty, that kind of thing. But I was told very quickly early on to nip that feeling in the bud. It's not, I didn't do anything on purpose, kind of a thing. And basically to just try to be consistent, what you hold one to, you hold to the other. It just might take longer. Harrison is very typical in many ways, the things he likes, the things he enjoys, It's been hard on our family just because we can't do a lot of things. Like we can't go to a movie as a family. So because Harrison won't sit through a movie. So we go to the special needs showing, which is not always fun for my older one, but, we try to do what we can. So I feel sometimes like I neglect the older one because I have to spend so much time working with the little one. but I'm sorry. What was your question? How has been the same? How has been different? So it's been the same, and it's been the same in that, keeping them accountable, being consistent, holding them to responsibilities in the house. So like Harrison is lower functioning, but he still can do chores. He can put his shoes in his closet. He can clear the table. So, trying to do those kinds of things is kind of like, I have two kids. They're different, but they're both, Harrison can do things. He's capable. It's just a matter of getting him to do it and teaching him how, and then being consistent.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's hard as a family though, because we can't like just, hey, let's all go to the movies or let's do this. It's everything has to be planned out. Okay, well, where are my reinforcements? I got to have my bag with my snacks in it, with the iPad, with the, I have to have his little like sticker chart with me. Like everything has to be planned. What is Harrison going to need? Do we need to take 2 cars to this event in case one of us has to go home early with him? So it's a lot of that.
Yeah. And, go ahead, Kelsey.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. I was going to ask how do you navigate having a marriage?
Oh my God. Well, I told you there was 2.
I would imagine it's incredibly difficult.
It is difficult. So, so my husband now is not their father. He's their stepdad, which is a whole other story. You should do a show on overweight, middle-aged moms with special need kids who are looking for a husband or a date. Like that would be a good show. So, right? Okay. So I was married to their dad for several years. Like we were together 15 years. It is having kids when you're married is just a strain on your marriage. It's a strain on your marriage anyway, right? Because it's about the kids and not, everything becomes about the kids. But then you add a disability on top of that. So now you add a child to the mix that now has special needs. It becomes even more of a strain. So, and that's not why we divorced at all, but it was very difficult because, like I said, I was very focused on getting him the right therapy, getting him the right this, getting him the right doctor, and I took charge in that sense, that it became my entire world. That I'm sure my marriage suffered because of that. And now I'm married to a wonderful man who's also a teacher. So, and he's better with Harrison than I am, I think sometimes. Like he's really good about holding him accountable and keeping consistency and managing therapy if I have an appointment or something like that. Like he totally is great, but it is a strain and you really do have to make time for your marriage. Otherwise I don't know. I don't know. I was a single mom for not very long and it was very hard. So kudos to the single moms who have children with special needs.
Yeah.
It's probably a big reason why my first marriage failed is just because I was so focused on my child, but maybe that's because he wasn't that good. I'm just kidding. If you're listening, I hope he's not listening.
Throw that shade.
I know. I'm just kidding.
It's all good.
Well,
I'm just kidding.
It's, to have kids and try to not only find time for the marriage, but just to find time for yourself, to take care of yourself, to have your alone time. And I think that also speaks volumes of your current husband who came into a relationship with you. I've heard, I don't know from experience, but heard from single moms that are like, when do I introduce that information into this atmosphere?
Yes, that was the thing. So I had gotten, divorced and I didn't want to be alone. Right. And so, cause at this point, I was 37 when I got divorced. So here I'm like, okay, I'm almost 40. I have 2 kids. One of them has special needs. Like, who's going to go out with me? Right? Like, who's going to go out with me? And so I met this man. He knew I had kids, but then that's the thing. I said, I told him right away. I said, I'm not going to lie to you, or I have 2 kids, and one of them, and he was 3 at the time. He was 3 or 4 at the time. So he was young. So at that point, we didn't really know how it would look when he would be 12. So it was probably easier for, I don't know.
Right.
I wonder now, I should ask him, would you still go out with me now with the 12-year-old?
I'm sure he would. He sounds
yeah.
I told him right away. I didn't wait because I wasn't going to waste my time. I said, I have a child with special needs. This is what he has. Read about it. Here's a website. If it's a deal breaker, tell me now.
Yeah. Take a card.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Take a card. Go to fraxa.org. I'll give you a few days.
I have a binder.
Yeah.
But I do. Here's a pamphlet. There's a pamphlet and the business card. I'll give you a few days. If it's a deal breaker, you have to tell me now. Because I wasn't going to introduce him to my kids until we were established. So he didn't meet my kids until we were almost together for like almost a year. I just kind of kept it like he was.
Oh, I didn't know it was that long.
Yeah, it was like maybe 8 months. And then he came around because he was mom's friend who like helped build my TV stand from IKEA.
He did.
That's how I introduced him. So I just said, if it's a deal breaker, I need to know. I have no idea what it's going to look like in the future. I have no idea if he's going to need to live with me for the rest of my life. I have no idea if he's going to be independent. This is best case scenario. This is worst case scenario. Right. And he basically said, it's not a deal breaker. So, he just walked in and brought me a Frappuccino.
Oh my God.
Good
My
man
good
button.
man
Good
button.
man button, big time. I love it. Hi, Michael. Oh my God. That's so sweet.
That's so nice.
Kelsey kind of touched on it a little bit.
I know, right?
Kelsey touched on it a little bit, but
now he's wiping it off with a Clorox wipe.
Oh my God. The times we live in. Oh my gosh. I talked to you yesterday while you were like talking to me. You were on an elliptical. You were telling the kids like, okay, go watch TV.
Yes.
That's kind of I would assume that's kind of what your self-care looks like a bit right now, where it's like you're doing it, but you're also multitasking. And like, how the hell are you taking care of yourself and taking time for yourself right now, especially?
Well, I'm not really, unless I'm forced to. So when you saw me on that elliptical, I was forced to go on it because in the morning, I had told my husband, I said, no matter what I say to you, make me go on the elliptical. Make me go on the elliptical today. We have an elliptical. Okay. I hate that thing. But I said, make me do something. Make me go on the elliptical. Make me go on for a walk. Like you have to force me. And no matter how hard I push back, because I usually push back, I usually say, I don't have time. Force me. So when I said, oh, Delaney wants me to call her right now, he's like, get on the elliptical. And I said, no, I'll just do it later. He said, if you don't do it now, you're not going to do it. Get on it. And he literally made me go on it because I told him to police me.
Yeah.
Right? And so I did that. Today, he forced me to take a walk with him. So he said, I'm going to go walk the dogs. You need to come with me. And I'm like, I don't have time for that. I got to like grade some papers. I got to Zoom with my class in like a half hour. He's like, if you do not, he said, it'll be easier later if you do it now or something like that. Right.
Right.
So
yeah.
It's been very hard. Today, he literally forced me to take a shower because I'm not kidding because
that one was for you and for him. He's like, I can't deal with the smell anymore, please.
It's true. It's true. It probably
Can you have your husband call me and make me shower once a week? Because, oh man, I am stretching this dry shampoo.
So I should try that. So my son's first therapy appointment is at 7:30 every morning. So, and I have it that early because I have obligations for work. So I'm still working full time. So I'm literally working all day because I'm just trying to fit things in. So emails and then assignments and then answering questions and then Zooming with my class or whatever I'm doing. And then in between, I'm doing his schoolwork and therapy, whatever. So I literally set my alarm for 7:15. I get out of bed. I might put on a clean shirt. And then I sit next to my son in his telehealth therapy. He's in the camera. I'm off the camera. So it doesn't really matter what I look like. By the time when that's done, then I get on my work email or I'm in a meeting or I'm in a whatever. And so by the time that's all done, then it's time for his next therapy appointment. So I have not developed a very good routine. I'm starting to now, but it took like 2 months. So I did, and you do feel better when you shower. So I don't know why. I don't know, but he's like literally forcing me. I said, I don't want you to micromanage me or police me because I hate that. I hate that in general, but I really need you to do it right now because I'm not taking care of myself. So I need someone else to do it. I need one thing off my plate.
Yeah.
So he's been really supportive in that sense, but we also fight about it because I'm like, stop telling me what are you saying? I'm fat. I need to go on the elliptical. Sorry.
He's like, I said what you told me to say.
Right.
That's exactly what he says.
Right.
That's exactly what he says.
I'm reading the sides.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
I'm not saying like there's this is in the cupboard, don't let me eat it. But then I do. Right.
I know that when we spoke to, like, you talked about the differences in like the therapy, like before quarantine, like people like when he would have therapy and stuff, somebody would come to the house, they would take him and you'd get some time alone to yourself. And now it's like you are doing all of it. Like the people are walking you through the therapy to give him. But you said something really sweet the other day where it's been a blessing. It's been a really nice blessing. Can you kind of talk about that?
So there is a silver lining to this quarantine time. First of all, I'm getting to spend way more time with my children, which has been wonderful because my older one is about to be 15 and he really just wants to be in his room all the time by himself and, roll his eyes at me. And the other one, so during, regular life, because right now we're not in regular life, I'm calling it a sci-fi movie. The therapists, we do in-home therapy. So the behaviorists come to our house and they work with him, intensively. And I'm there to, sometimes just observe, sometimes to participate. Sometimes I would just sit and just kind of keep working, grade papers, read my emails or whatever while they were doing the direct intervention. So I was present, but I wasn't always totally present. You know what I'm saying? So they're not coming into my house right now. I'm fortunate enough where my health insurance is covering telehealth, so they can do it via like Zoom or whatever. They're using some program. And so they're doing their intervention that way. But that requires me being like the surrogate therapist. So they're telling me what to do with him. I'm doing it. And, they're giving me feedback or whatever. And we have these live sessions. And that has been such a blessing because it's forced me to be totally present. I'm way more aware of his capabilities than I was maybe before. And now he's associating me with work type activities. And so now when I'm telling him to do things or whatever, he's responding to me better than he was before because certain tasks, he has a little, I don't know what you call it, but he associates certain people with certain things, right? So he wasn't associating work tasks and sitting at the table and playing a game and doing things with me because he'd do those with the therapist. So now I can say, hey, let's sit down and let's play a game or let's do this or that. And he's doing it now. So that's been wonderful. So that's been a real blessing. So I'm fortunate that I have that. So even though it's hard, and his schoolwork too. So his teacher has been amazing. I have to give shout out to every special ed teacher right now that's in the universe doing all of the special ed work for their kids. So, he's in a very small class. He has 12 kids in his class. His teacher, who's also somebody I work with, but regardless of that, she has driven to the home of every single one of her students at least once a week for something. One day they had a parade. One day she drew she did the sidewalk chalk saying, "Hi, Harry, we miss you." This week she brought over materials for a science experiment. It's like grow your own sweet potato. Yeah, she's just dropping things off on the door, ringing the doorbell, checking it. Yeah, she's been amazing. And and that's just her. That's not necessarily been mandated by anybody. You know, she's just doing that because she cares. So, but yeah, it's forced me to be totally present and with him during this. So I'm hoping that, and I realize now when we go back to a normal kind of schedule, when the therapists come back into the home, I don't want to be I want to be doing it with them at this point because it's taught me a lot. So I feel like I feel like now I'll be better able to handle him, like especially in public or especially, you know, because when you go to work all day and you come home and you're tired and you're overwhelmed and your workday really isn't finished and you're trying to finish things and you have the older one asking for help with his homework, the therapists were like a godsend to me because, okay, they're at least working with Harry, but now they're not here anymore. So I'm doing it. So,
anyway. Joe, we do have to wrap up in a couple minutes. I have a few questions.
Oh, I'm sorry. I talked so much.
No,
oh my gosh. You've been so amazing.
Great. You've been amazing. But I do have a couple, I think there's a few things that would be really important for our listeners to hear really quickly. I know this could be an emotional question, so share whatever you're comfortable with. But
oh my God.
When you think of like the future for Harry, like what does that look like in your head? What are the options? And can you kind of speak to that for
I can. I probably will get emotional because I have a really hard time going into the future. It scares me, obviously. I do, you know, I am starting, you know, he's 12, so it's not too far away, but it's still far enough. But I do know, you know, I've been reaching out more and more. Like I'm on a ton of like Facebook mom groups for kids with special needs, Fragile X moms, you know, that kind of thing. And I look at the ones that are older, the ones that have older kids, you know, what are you doing? And I do know that, at least this is what I've been told. So forgive me for any misinformation, but, you know, by the time he's 18, I need to apply for like conservatorship so I can make decisions for him because he'll be a legal adult. And so I need to be able to make medical decisions and financial decisions for him. I do not anticipate he'll be able to live independently. So he'll stay with me or, you know, ideally best case scenario, a lot of times, you know, I would love it if he was somewhat semi-independent enough where he could live in like a nice group home or something like that. But I really don't know. All I know right now is that by the time he's 18, I need to think about legally what I have to do for him in terms of being able to make decisions for him and then setting him up with any kind of like social services. What are those options? You know, and that's where Regional Center for California has been very helpful to me. I just had his like we have a meeting once a year, you know, to kind of update his, you know, his case, his file. How's he doing? What progress is he making? You know, what do you need from us right now? And the older he gets, you know, depending on his age, there's different services for people that, you didn't know necessarily existed. Right. So, you know, there's a whole community of people whose job it is to help parents like me, right? So, which is amazing. They're all like social workers and that kind of thing. So as he gets older, they tell me these are what this is what you need to start thinking about. So, I'm hoping I don't put any pressure on his brother, who's 14, right? I don't put any pressure on him, but my hope is that when I die or whatever, that he'll obviously watch out for his brother. If not having, you know, he always tells me, oh, you know, he'll live with me one day. And I'm like, oh, I know, but I'm like, but I don't want him to feel burdened by that. Right. But I mean, obviously he will have to be the person who is responsible for those decisions at some point, right? When I go or his father goes or whatever. So I'm at the point now where, okay, he's 12, he's going to be in the 7th grade. I really need to start thinking about those kinds of things, right? Because those years fly by. My older one, between 6th and 8th grade, he became like a sweet little boy to now he's like man boy. And so those years fly.
Yeah.
Those years fly by. And so, so I know my time is limited, but I still have time. So, but I am starting to think about those things and, well, how did you do this? And how far in advance do you have to start? And everyone's like, well, at least 6 months to a year before he's 18. And that, although I'm just getting information at this point.
Right.
So if somebody is listening to this today, tell me, what do I need to do? Right. I'm sure there's going to be other moms out there. And that's how I get the most information is not from a website, not from like a government agency. I get my info from other parents. And so that's what I would say my biggest piece of advice to any newly diagnosed family is find other parents.
Yeah.
It's like a whole world of people. It's like a secret club, there's most of my information and the things that I've gotten from like the state or from the doctor or from whatever have been because somebody else told me about it.
Yeah. Perfect.
So there's a whole
That's exactly
not a good way to end.
I was going to say,
thank you.
What do you want to say to other people? And you just said it. Josephine, thank you so much. You're amazing. And
okay, edit anything that I said that was stupid.
No, you were so good.
You were great. I love you so much. And
I love you too, lady. I'm so proud of you.
You're sweet. Thank you.
Your dick mug is on my shelf right now.
You're so sweet. We're gonna record a separate intro and all that. So you are free to go. And thank you so much.
Thank you
for your time.
Thank you.
Being so open.
Congratulations on your Netflix special.
Oh, thank you.
Bye,
you look
Joe.
very pretty in it.
Thank you.
Bye, Joe. Love you.
Bye.
Love you, Joe.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for coordinating that interview, Del. I learned a ton.
I know.
I had no idea. I had no idea what that was. It's amazing to me how passionate she is about informing other people. I think that's so important because I had no idea. I had no idea what that was.
Oh yeah. Our whole family had no idea. And like, basically, when that happened, like we all became people who were like, okay, what is this? What do we do? How do we help? How can we support? And so, it's like our whole family is now educated on Fragile X syndrome. So when I've actually come across people who have who have talked about it before or something like that, and I can actually speak on like, oh yeah, one of my cousins and stuff like that, or, a couple people in my family also have this. And so, it's something that a lot of people don't know about, yet it seems to be probably a lot more common than people would realize.
Right.
And I know Josephine pointed to a lot of incredible resources for people. So if you're listening and you're a new parent whose kid was just diagnosed with this or something, check those out. I know she's told me that she's a part of a lot of like mom blogs and Facebook groups and all kinds of stuff. And she also told me that because of quarantine and stuff, like the reason that a lot of services are not available is because of like HIPAA laws and stuff like that, and like privacy laws, where a group Zoom call with, special needs children would actually be breaking a lot of rules. And therefore a lot of people don't have access to even the services that Harrison has access to, because Josephine said, she's fortunate enough that her health insurance and stuff covers certain things, but a lot of people, parents and children are actually going without a lot of stuff right now. And a lot of things are not provided by the school districts and stuff like that. So Josephine also said she is in the Self-Helpless podcast Facebook group. And so if anybody has any questions for her or wants to connect with her, maybe you are a parent with a child, with special needs or Fragile X, and you have information for her as well, you can find her in the Self-Helpless Facebook group. If you just say, hey, Josephine, she knows to kind of keep an eye out on the day or whatever that her episode airs. So
right.
that she's more than happy to speak with people and stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm going to share an iTunes review of the episode, and then we'll just wrap it up for this one. So this is from Love this app, 235 exclamation point. It says, my boyfriend and I listened to Taylor's Netflix special and I was immediately hooked to her comedy. I needed more, so I looked to see if Spotify had any content, and I found Self-Helpless, and I have never loved a podcast more than I love this one. And I thought Armchair Expert was the top of my list. Nope, not anymore. Haha, suck it, Dax Shepard. That's me. That's not her saying that.
Shepard,
Also,
please come on our show.
yeah, also, don't suck it at all, Dax Shepard. It's just, that's kind of cool. Okay, I love all of your humor, but even more, I find this podcast to be therapeutic and legitimately helpful. Your guests have been tremendous. Jordan Pease and Kira in particular. Keep up the amazing work, and I can't wait to religiously follow your careers. Love you, gals. Oh, that's so nice.
That's so nice.
So very
Thank
sweet.
you.
So
Yeah,
very
thank you for
sweet.
taking the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're about to record another episode for you guys, so we're gonna go. But we love you. Hope you're staying safe.
Yeah. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Yeah. All right. Talk
soon.
to you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you guys so much for listening to Self-Helpless. We love you guys so much. There are a few different ways you can support our show. You can leave us a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. It really helps us move up the charts. You can also tell a friend about the show, post it on social media, and you can join our Patreon. It's where you can get bonus episodes from us and lots of really fun content and ways to interact with the show. That's at patreon.com/selfhelpless. And if you go to selfhelplesspodcast.com, that's where you can get links to all of our individual stuff. Delaney, where can people find you?
You can find me at DelaneyFisher.com. You can find the online courses there, one-on-one creative consulting, watch my comedy special, and find Dicks by Delaney there.
Perfect. Tay, where can people find you?
You can find me on ttomcomedy.com for tour dates and links to everything else social media-wise. I am at Taylor Tomlinson on Twitter and Instagram.
Perfect. You guys can find me at kelseycook.com for all my tour dates. My Instagram is at kelseycookcomedy. Twitter's at kelseycook. Please be sure to watch my foosball web series on YouTube called Wrists of Fury. I've had Delaney and Taylor on together. It was such a fun episode. And you can download and buy my album Savor It on iTunes, Spotify, anywhere you find comedy albums. We also want to give a shout out to our amazing producer, Lauren Mahoney, and our amazing editor, Emma Erdbrink. We love you guys, and we will talk to you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Can you help?